5 minutes after 7 o'clock, 7:05. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to it. We have a guest in the studio, Tommy McKay, who is running to be a delegate for the state of Maryland, and he was looking to occupy the seat that Johnny Wood will be stepping away from. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, T. Thank you, Heather. Good to be with you this morning.
Good to have you here. Now, we were talking off air because you are a businessman, and we were talking about, House of Delegates. You're up there. You're going to be making decisions in Annapolis. There are a bunch of things that affect you as a business person. Let's talk about, and this is one thing that drives T crazy, so let's see if you guys are on the same page. Minimum wage, which has been bantered around and talked about. As a business owner, how do you feel about an increase in the state minimum wage?
Look, we all business owners want their associates to have the highest pay level that they can achieve.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
There are industries, quite frankly, in this country that work at different pay rates and different pay scales. Our industry that we're in, and most retail, works at a rather low pay scale. Mm-hmm. But we also have we hire untrained workers, and we have to
it's entry-level jobs.
Entry-level jobs. We don't hire a single person at minimum wage. Every one of our employees hire a wage higher. Now, we start right at about $7.50 an hour, mm-hmm. which is close to minimum mm-hmm. wage, but we have wage scales. So our average wage is about $16 an hour, but we have a lot of people at $7.50, a lot of people at $8.50, $9.50.
Sure.
And you change minimum wage, you change that entire scale. I'm not opposed to people making more. Believe me, we want people to make more. The problem is, in this economy, it just isn't there right now.
Yeah.
It just is not there.
That's exactly what I feel about it, too.
Because we haven't had anybody on that is on the other side, and we haven't asked that question. But you do employ quite a bit of people. But if you're a delegate, is that going to sway a vote for you?
Here's the issue, really. Federal minimum wage, in my opinion, for Maryland businesses and for our employees in this state, needs to be a federal issue because it creates an unfair playing field with national and international companies. For instance, let's give you an example. Subway franchise owner might have 2 Subways in Maryland. 100% of his employees fall under this new Maryland minimum wage requirement.
Okay.
Wawa, who has less than 5% of their employees in Maryland, mm-hmm. only 5% of their employees fall under this new minimum wage requirement. So the Subway guy, it's going to cost him 65 cents more to make a sub. The Wawa guy, it's going to cost him less than a penny more to make a sub.
Okay. Oh,
so the playing field is not fair. So if we're going to move minimum wage, it needs to be done at the federal level, not at the state level. You can talk about border businesses that set on the border of Maryland. Mm-hmm. They also have a problem. But truly, it is a competitive issue for local and state-run businesses. Believe me, Food Lion will understand how it will impact McKay's. Right. And they will understand it very well. And they will do what they have to do to gain market share.
Of course they
during
will.
that period of time. And
so
we would do the same to them.
So you're saying it should just be federal, it should be 10-10 across the board in the nation or whatever?
No, I'm not saying it should be 10-10 across the nation. I'm saying it's a federal issue.
Okay, it's a federal issue.
Yes.
So, look at how nervous he got.
No, I didn't get nervous about that.
The thing that I've always had a problem with, the thing that I've always had a problem with when people start talking about raising the minimum wage, I guess maybe there's a factor of this I don't understand because, look, you can make the minimum wage anything you want, but the owner of the store is just going to have to raise his or her prices to offset that increase. So if a loaf of bread costs $1.50 now, and you raise the minimum wage up, and now he's got to pay his employees more, so now that loaf of bread costs $3. It seems like a snake eating its own tail. I don't see where it really benefits anybody. You could make the minimum wage anything.
And those who are making lower incomes are paying more for the same goods and services now. However, remember that if all of us had to raise prices, if it was put in effect in Food Lion and McKay's both had to raise prices, that would at least keep our employees' jobs safe.
Yes.
However, if we can't raise prices because Food Lion recognizes the challenge we have, then is going to be a difficult situation for us to maintain jobs and keep
Right.
people employed.
Well, let's talk about jobs in Maryland
Right.
because a lot of candidates have come in here and they said, oh, yeah, I'm going to bring jobs to Maryland. Okay. A lot of jobs are leaving Maryland. A lot of jobs are leaving Maryland.
As a delegate, what would you do?
You know, if Maryland businesses recognize that there's not going to be quick and immediate tax relief in this state. We recognize that, and it's unfortunate. There needs to be some tax relief.
Yeah.
But it's not going to happen fast. What Maryland businesses would feel good about right now today is the regulatory environment in Maryland being brought down several notches to where we could actually operate and grow our businesses without hitting regulations that make it uneconomical and unaffordable for us to grow our businesses.
I've heard that before. The regulations. Like, what are you?
Well, let me
How
ask you
do
this.
regulations cost money? If to follow the law, how does that cost you?
Let me give you an example.
Please.
And I'll use our project here in Charlotte Hall that we're trying, the new grocery store that we're hoping to build. We have, before we even get started, we have over $4 million worth of infrastructure that is due, most of it is due to regulations that have evolved over the last 5 years.
$4 million.
Is that county
Yes.
or state or everybody
Mostly
combined?
It's combined, okay? We have today's stormwater management programs. I would suggest maybe that's good, but the real problem in stormwater management, excuse me.
Can I get you some water?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
The real problem in stormwater management is not the new stuff that's being built because we started this regulation in '86 of putting stormwater management regulations in place, and so the quality of water in new development has gotten really good.
Right.
It's the old infrastructure where the runoff is really creating the problems, and that's where it needs. So, but they keep upgrading the requirements for new constructions to the point where now you're looking at a $2 million stormwater management project just to build a facility like that.
Before you put a
And
brick
then-
in, before anything.
Yeah, before anything. And then we all want safe highways. We all want to improve the intersections, but they don't want you to just improve what your impact would be. They want you to improve the impact that has taken place over the last 4 or 5 years from all the other growth in the area. So,
okay.
So we have to go down as far as Route 6, which is about 2 miles south of the project, to make road improvements for a project 2 miles north.
Well, let me ask you this.
That's crazy. I've never heard. That's
Well,
crazy.
It's the truth.
Let me ask you.
I believe you. I'm not doubting you for a second.
I've
That's
talked
crazy.
to a lot of business owners, and I'm hearing, and maybe you can speak to this. As a delegate, obviously you're going to be up in Annapolis. Now, a lot of zoning and planning has been shifted to Annapolis and has become the domain of Annapolis.
Plan Maryland.
And for local business owners and people who are trying to start a business or trying to build something, it's very difficult to have to deal with Annapolis. Can't we wrestle some of that back down to a local level?
Well, as a former president of the county commissioners, this is a very important subject to me because, first of all, land use is the most complicated part of government other than
Well,
budgets.
it's a finite amount.
Yeah. So I think having experience in land use and understanding how local land use policy is derived, especially here in our community. We have a really good land use policy in this community, which most people don't understand. It really drives growth to our development districts, which are Leonardtown and Lexington Park. And it's been very successful over the last 5-6 years doing that. Most of our farmland that was, when I was commissioner, when I went into office and doing most of the time I was there, we had a serious issue of farmland turning into houses.
Yeah, well, it was going crazy.
It was going crazy.
Yeah.
5% of our farmland a year was turning into houses. Last year, less than 1/2% of our farmland was turned into houses. Now, the growth has slowed, but also the development has been directed into our development districts. It's no longer affordable to build houses on farmland, really. So it's local policy, but T, you're exactly right. We must keep it at the county commissioner's table. We cannot let Annapolis dictate the local land use policy for St. Mary's County. We know what we need to run our community and have a good quality of life.
It sounds a little, I don't know what the word is, but I think you're spot on correct because, look, every county has its own, coinky-dinks. They have their own kind of things that are unique to that county. Charles County does, Calvert County does, St. Mary's County does.
Annapolis does not know.
They don't.
Where
Annapolis
Bushwood
doesn't
Wharf
know
is.
best.
Annapolis doesn't know where Helen is on a map. They
Right.
don't. They don't know where it is.
Heather, the
Tell
Well-
them where Scotland is.
Yeah.
And they're going to say, oh, it's over the pond.
Right.
It's over the Atlantic. No, it's part of Maryland.
And the problem is, it's not the Annapolis legislature, it's the Annapolis bureaucracy
Yeah.
that ends up in power and in controlling St. Mary's County land use.
So let's talk about that bureaucracy, of which, if you win, you will be part of. What do you get? What's the plan if you get there?
Well, one of the things we did as commissioner was to streamline the bureaucracy by eliminating agencies. We went from 17 agencies down to 12. I think the state of Maryland could really consolidate down to about 8 agencies that and hire, not,
Would
not
people
politi-
lose their jobs?
not political. Well, at higher levels, at administrative higher pay levels, yes.
Okay.
There would be some reduction of employment at those
There
levels.
should be.
And that's what we did in county government. And we were able to really not just save money because executive directors, their administrative staff was no longer needed, but you were able to streamline services down to a much more effective level. The state of Maryland could do this. And these 8 agencies or even 10 agencies, and I've discussed this with all the governor candidates, could have really professionals hired to administer those agencies. Right now, it's political patronage appointments for all of these secretaries throughout Maryland. And most of them have never,
Right.
don't have a bit of experience in management or running those agencies. The governor gets elected and he puts his friend as Secretary of Transportation, his friend as Secretary of DNR, his friend as Secretary of Economic Development.
And these guys are drawing
They're good-
huge salaries.
And they're good people, but they just don't
Don't-
have the experience to run these agencies.
Right.
You could have a deputy secretary who's a political patronage appointment, but let's hire 8 or 10 professionals who know how to run these agencies.
Because it's
So
a
that-
lot of money, man.
Yeah, it is a lot of money.
It is.
So, this is the executive branch, and it's going to take a good governor. It's going to take a lot of spirited conversation to get this done. But we did it here in St. Mary's County. I think we can do that at the state of Maryland.
One subject, too, that I wanted to talk about that we've talked about a lot on this show. And since you were a county commissioner and have dealt with budgets and school budgets and things like that, let's talk about the Common Core. Are you, because Tommy, my kid, is coming home and he's got homework there. Going into 4th grade, I'm losing my mind. I have no idea. And, I'm sure it's my failing. But do you support Common Core curriculum standards?
I support having standards in education. I do not support Common Core because, well, first of all, standards in education, whether it's No Child Left Behind, Common Core, or what we did in St. Mary's County as Commissioner President, the Bridge to Excellence Agreement, which we did,
Right.
have standards. Now, our Bridge to Excellence Agreement, the standards were reviewed, and there was penalties if those standards weren't met. Unfortunately, there's not it's not as well defined in these large national programs. There should be standards. There should be
There has
minimum
to be
levels of
standards, yes,
achievement.
of course.
Of course. The problem is Common Core and No Child Left Behind, they assume that every student is equal. They bring students down to an equal plateau rather than bringing students up to the highest level of performance possible.
I think you're right.
And that is why it has to be kept at local level. The administration of these programs has to be done at our local school board level. And if Common Core is the solution we're going to move forward with, we have to make sure that the local school board has the ability to manage it, control it, and not let it hold students back. Teachers need to be able to bring the best achieving students to the highest level possible. And Common Core, as it stands today, will not allow them to do that. So we have to make sure that our local school board can modify, change, and make it work for our teachers and not be restricted by the law.
Let's pretend we got a crystal ball here, and you've been in this county for generations. Where do you see and how do you balance development in Southern Maryland? We've got to bring, I think, maybe I'm off the mark here, I don't know. I think we need to bring in, we've got to become appealing to business. So businesses come here and create jobs. I think it's a good thing. But then you have to balance that against we want to continue to have kind of a rural lifestyle. How do you balance that? What do you see long term for Southern Maryland?
Well, T-Bone, don't forget Pax River. It is still our number one employer.
Right.
And a lot of the decisions we make in this community have been and will be what is best for Pax River, balanced with what is best for the community. And that is a tough balance to reach. I think that we do need to create in Southern Maryland an investment zone for cybersecurity. I think that's the next big thing.
Good.
Drones.
And also a center of excellence for unmanned air vehicles. So I think those are two areas that we can leverage some of the expertise, knowledge that's in our community to develop industries. The 10th Fleet of the Navy is in Fort Meade, and that is their cybersecurity fleet. And they are there with NSA. So the Navy has their own cybersecurity. I'm not talking about cybersecurity for military. I'm talking about cybersecurity for private sector.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a huge industry.
Yeah. So if we could create an investment zone, which Anne Arundel County is trying to do, and the Speaker of the House, Mike Bush, is trying to do that in Anne Arundel.
Where would you do that in 29A?
I would like to extend that investment zone into Calvert, St. Mary's, and Charles County.
Now, what is what's an investment zone?
Well, it's where you give tax credits to businesses based on a certain number of employees, a certain amount of dollars expended each year in that business. You give tax credits that are comparable to those businesses coming into the community.
Okay,
It
good.
might be a 5-year program. It might be a 10-year program,
Sure.
depending on the size of the business, depending on how many jobs they're going to bring into the
But
community.
it's a carrot to put out there and say, hey, look what we can do.
And you create a mass, you create an industry by doing that, hopefully.
Okay, I have a question too, because you're talking about land use, growth. What were your views, and I'm sure you had some, or still do, about the ability for a public utility like a Metcom to send a home to a house sale for a late bill? It was in the news. We talked about it a lot. How do you feel? Because it's not just in St. Mary's County that happens. The laws are on the books in counties throughout the state of Maryland. I mean, if something like that came up in the House of Delegates, do you think it's right for a public utility to send a home to a house sale for a delinquent bill?
The short answer is no, but it's a very complicated subject. And
I'm aware.
And you didn't let me answer T's
Go
how
ahead.
do we balance growth. So hopefully we'll get back to that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
But here's the situation. It's kind of like property taxes. If you don't pay your property taxes, your house is going to be sold.
It's nothing like property taxes,
Yes, it
Tommy.
is. Let me explain it to you. Sure it is.
I've had a lot of people explain it to me, and I've researched it. So you go ahead and give me your thoughts on it. It's not necessarily an education, with all due respect, but go ahead.
The funding of Metcom,
Right.
and the interest they pay on their debt is secured largely by the users of that system.
I am
Okay?
absolutely aware of that.
So if the property of those users was not used to secure that debt, the interest rate that they would be paying at Metcom would be significantly higher. And in fact, it's not even certain that without you, a non-user, the rest of the citizens of the community guaranteeing that debt, that they could even get financing.
I'm a user.
Okay? Yeah, but there's
And
people
half
who
of
aren't.
my bill goes to pay for saving the bay and water maintenance service fees. Half of my bill for water goes to things that don't even apply to water.
Well,
I mean,
we
so
can argue that's a different subject.
we sure could, but how about instead of going out and building infrastructure that there are no buildings there, running lines to vacant lots that aren't even going to be hooked up? Maybe they should wait and not do that and wait till people move into those homes so they can actually pay the bill.
What happens, yes, but what happens in the particular case that was in the news, a sewer line is run through a community. There's a limited number of what's called EDUs, uses on that. So let's say there's 100 EDUs, 100 people, 100 homes can hook up to this line. That's the capacity. In this particular case, each homeowner on that line we went to them and said, do you want to hook up? yes or no. They were asked. They were given the option, yes or no. And some said no. Some said yes. Some says, well, not now, but I want to reserve my right to hook up in the future. In this particular case, that was the situation of that gentleman that was in the news. He said, not now, but I want to reserve my right. So he then, in order to reserve his right, was required to pay what called the front footage fee, or the fee that each one of those users, not the usage fee, not the cost of using the system, but the fee to put the system in place. He reserved those rights for years. And then stopped paying to reserve them. There was other people who needed hookups. There was people on that Hollywood-Leonardtown Road who had failing sewer systems, who have failing sewer systems today, who cannot hook up because there is no capacity on that line. There are people reserving hookups like this gentleman, and they've been paying their bill, so they've been reserving their hookup. It cannot be taken from him and given to someone else as long as he pays his bill. He was given an option. He was given an option to have that debt forgiven if he would give up his EDU.
It is a complicated subject, and I will forever contend, and I still contend, that nobody should lose their home over a utility bill.
I agree.
And at the end of the day, that's where it boils down to me.
But quickly, let's go back to your answer about growth.
Well,
before we let you go here.
Yeah, I think it's very, we established, when I was in office, we established over 50,000 acres of farmland preservation that as a project. We created new rural legacy areas that included over 13,000 acres. We have concentrated development into the development centers through correct zoning. Water and sewer is not what's going to control growth. I mean, you have communities like Golden Beach that do not have sewer, that have a lot of homes.
Yeah.
What controls growth is zoning and planning, and we should not have. I think today's current zoning, which essentially is one home per 10 acres, it's one home per 5, but then you have to have a TDR, which a TDR is worth 5 acres as well. So it's essentially one home per 10 acres. That zoning through most of the rural areas of St. Mary's County is what's causing our farmland to stay farmland. And I think that's how we do that, by having the correct zoning in rural areas, but zoning in development districts that allow for more intense growth.
We got a couple of minutes left here. What message do you want people to get about Tommy McKay?
Especially today, it's a big day.
Yeah.
It's a huge day, and for me, it's so important that I do well, not for me, but for the hundreds of volunteers that have helped, and my wife, my family. It's amazing what people dedicate to someone like me for a campaign. And you don't know. In fact, you oftentimes think, well, why do I get all this help? And my God, it's so rewarding. And I just hope that we can do well for all the people that have supported us in our cause. I think people take their representation seriously. I think they want their voice to be heard. I think they want lower taxes. Mm-hmm. I think they want a good economy. I think they want their rights protected. I think they want things like illegal immigration stopped. They want this out-of-control debt at federal, state, and local levels to be put in reverse. So I think. And
you're saying these are going to be priorities of yours.
And I think and I think hiring somebody with experience is what's critical at this stage. If you want to hire somebody to fly an airplane for you, hire a pilot who has experience.
Amen.
Okay, Tommy. Okay, so you go to your deli and you get one of those sandwiches, and you're walking out.
Fantastic, by the way.
Okay, what do you do? What condiment? Is it mayonnaise or is it Miracle Whip?
It's absolutely Miracle Whip.
There's that guy right there.
No way. Really?
That's the answer right there.
Miracle Whip.
Yeah, ask my wife.
Why?
It's right. That's what's in our refrigerator.
That's
Miracle
the answer right there. First guy that said it.
The first
The
guy.
only one that got it right.
The one in weeks.
I have to be honest, T. I used to be mayonnaise until my wife, Lachelle, convinced me otherwise.
Yeah,
So
well,
I don't
it's
know why.
a-
You need to talk to Lachelle.
It's the zest of Miracle Whip. It's fantastic.
And that's all we eat now is Miracle Whip.
All right. Well, listen,
Oh,
Tommy. Hey,
wow.
listen. Good luck to you. All right. I hope
you.
everything goes well. Get out and vote, everybody. Tommy McKay is running for delegate, and the seat that will become available that Johnny Wood is stepping away from. So get out and vote. It is 7:30. Let's get a check of traffic, and we'll check in with ABC News.
Thank you.